So yeah, again, thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Now I believe The Hate You Give just celebrated its 100th consecutive week on the New York bestsellers list, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
Now I know you started working on the come up before The Hate You Give even came into fruition, but I wanted to know, did the success of The Hate You Give change things for you at all in terms of the process of writing the book?
It definitely did. There was when The Hate You Give started really just taking off, I suddenly found myself putting a lot of pressure on myself with the second book. And I will say that like the plot of On the Come Up changed so much. Like originally the plot was a lot like the plot that it ended up with, but as I was seeing the success of The Hate You Give, I started thinking, do I need to write something more like this? Less hip hop and more social justice, police brutality, blah, 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 because this seems to be what people want. So I had to make the decision of, no, I'm going to write the story that I want to tell. And even though I'm telling a brief story about hip hop and poverty and all of this, it still addresses these social issues in its own way. So I wanted it to be a different book, but I still wanted it to be a book that I would have enjoyed at that age range. But also it was the book that I wanted to write. So there was definitely a lot of pressure I placed on myself at first through this whole process.
And of course, like you mentioned, hip-hop was a huge influence for this book, but also for yourself as a teenager. Mm-hmm. Does it still hold that same level of importance and influence for you now as an adult?
Oh, that's a good one. It does and it doesn't. I'm really selective with what I listen to now that I was as a teenager. I listened to everything when I was a teen. But now I'm selective because there's some things I'm like, no, I can't get with that. I can't listen to that. Just even the degrading of women, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I know I'm old. I can't listen to some stuff now, But I think hip hop does, when it's done well, it still inspires me. Like, I look at artists like Kendrick Lamar, I look at J. Cole, I look at Rhapsody, who's this phenomenal rapper out of South Carolina. She does incredible work. And I look at the way that they use their art to tell stories authentically, and that inspires me still. So it's not the same, but I no longer have to see myself in anything to get a good idea of myself as much. And I think that's what hip hop provided me when I was younger. So I have a better view of myself without it, but it did help me get to this point. So I'm thankful for it.
And when we look at Star and Bree, they are both strong with their differences, but they are both very strong, independent characters at such a young age. Mm-hmm. What is it about these, Generation Z or Generation Z, young black women that resonates with you so much that you continuously draw inspiration from them?
They inspire me. I think they inspire me more than hip hop does right now. These young black women are so, they still need to know who they are, and in a world that often tries to tell them who they are, but they're determined to define that for themselves. And that's a beautiful thing, And what I love too is that they're becoming outspoken and they're speaking up for themselves in ways that I wouldn't have imagined doing when I was their age. Like, there are two young ladies I think of a lot, and that one of them is Marley Diaz, who started the 1000 Black Girls Book Drive, and then another is Little Miss Flint, Mari Copany, and Mari has been doing a water drive for Flint, Michigan for years, and she's only 12, I think. And I think about that and I look at these girls, and the fact is, one, they shouldn't have to put movements on their shoulders, but they're doing it at such a young age, and it inspires me. But if nothing else, I want to provide black girls books that say you don't have to do this, but there's so much beauty and so much strength that resides in you that I hope you recognize it when you read my books. So I'm definitely inspired by young black girls and black girl magic. I wish black girl magic was a phrase when I was in their age range. It would have given me so much empowerment. So they empower me and inspire me. Like, just a few moments ago here, I had a young girl come up to me, a young black girl, who said, "Can I shake your hand?" And she said, "Because I want to be able to one day say I shook the hand of my inspiration." And I had to have a moment. I said, "No, I'm shaking the hand of mine." And that's what I'm about to tear up now. But to know that I gave her that, I hope that she knows that she gives me that right back.
And what do you see in Star and in Bree that you see yourself in?
Like Star, I often wondered if my voice mattered, if it was worth speaking up and speaking out, and I had to get to the point of realizing it was. Like Brianna, I care too much, possibly. I cared too much about things that I probably shouldn't have been worried about, like my family and making sure they were okay. And I was very passionate and driven in that regard, and just wanting to make it so that we were okay. So I definitely share that with her. But I think with both girls too, I often felt like the world made me feel like I was either too much or not enough, and never in between. You know, Star deals with that when she's in her white school. She feels like she's too much, so she shrinks herself. And Bree, when she's at her school, she feels like she's not enough, and she tries, and she also feels like she's too much. So, but she, unlike Star, she doesn't try to shrink herself or fit into their image of her. So I dealt with that myself, though. I dealt with a world that made me feel that way, and I hope that when young women read my books, especially, they walk away feeling like they are enough and decide to define themselves. I didn't have that when I was their age, so I want to give them that, what wasn't given to me.
Now, with going briefly back to The Hate U Give, obviously it did spawn a huge successful film as well. And I wanted to know, looking back on that experience, what do you take away from it? From seeing, words on a page transform onto the screen, what do you look back on and think, wow, what was that experience like for you?
That was surreal. That was a dream come true. Ever since I was little, I told my mom I wanted to write stories, and I wanted to see those stories on the TV or on the movie screen. And that happened. That's amazing to me. It shows me the power of storytelling, but it also shows me that so often all of these movies, they take thousands of people to make, and to have thousands of people come together and say, this is something we want to get behind, that blew my mind. It's humbling. It's humbling to know that people I admired for so long came together. Like, I'm a huge fan of Common, and for Common to be like, I'm a huge fan of you, I'm like, what? And then, like, all of these talented actors and actresses, but it also shows me that dreams are possible, and I hope it shows other people. I never expected any of this to happen. Had you told me 3-4 years ago that this would be my life, I would have thought you were lying, blah, blah, blah. And for it to have actually happened, it shows me that anything's possible. So I'm going to stop putting limits on myself and on my dreams and go even further, hopefully.
Now, with that film, it did so well, but initially there was some backlash for some people in terms of the casting of Star and it being Amanda Stenberg, who was amazing in the film anyway.
Yes.
So, that's that. But with, I read that On the Come Up will also be made into a film as well. And with that first experiences, did you realise that there were certain things that you may be willing to compromise or be more open towards with that particular film? And is there certain things that you know for sure that you wouldn't be able to compromise just for the nature of the book? With The Hate U Give and everything with Amanda, like, a lot of people didn't know she was cast, like, before there was a cover. She was cast before the book was even published. Like, she was cast almost 2 years before the book was published. So for me, she was always Star, So I had to let people make their voices heard, because colorism is such a huge thing that needs to be addressed. But for me and for those who made the decision to cast her, it was because she was great as Star, and not because she was light skinned. But I get why people made that assumption. I get it. But with On the Come Up, one thing that I definitely want to do with this one is I want all black everything, as we say. The Hate U Give, we had two great screenwriters, and one of them, though, she was a white woman, and she recently passed, but she did a phenomenal job. But I think it's still important that we have black voices bring our stories to life. And so with On the Come Up, I'm hoping that we can get a black screenwriter, specifically a black woman. I had a chance to work on the script, and we did have a black woman on The Hate U Give who worked on the script as well. But I think it would be great to have one in the steering wheel from the beginning. And that's not to say other people can't tell our stories, but for so long we haven't been able to tell our stories. So why not give us the chance to do that? So that's one thing, like, I'm real adamant about. And two, I really want this to be an homage to young women and young women of hip hop and women of hip hop. And that's one thing that I've really made clear to them, that, I want this, if we can, let's get some women rappers in there and have guest appearances. Let's celebrate them. So on that note, those are like the two things that are really sticking through. I want black women to feel seen and heard with this movie as much as possible. And the Garden State universe, as some people are calling it, is expanding, as we can see, as it's a common thread throughout. What more can we expect from it? Is this something that's going to be long-standing for a couple more books? Do we know? Can we know at all?
I will say my third book will be set there as well, but it's probably the last book that will be set there. It's not a sequel to either The Hate U Give or On the Come Up, but the main character is someone that my readers already know. So
Ooh.
that's all I can say. That's all I can say. But I think after this one, I'm gonna at least for a while go to create another world or something. Just I think after this book, this may be the last one in Garden Heights. So we'll see. We'll see. You know, later down the line, something may change. But right now, I think the third one will be the last one.
And of course, I'm sure you will be embarking on a book tour, and I know that you're, I think, doing a talk at the South Bank Centre. Is it tomorrow, I believe?
Yes.
Are you used to the idea of going out and doing these book tours, or was it something that you always were kind of a natural with, so to speak?
You know, it's been a little different. It was an adjustment, I think, for a lot of writers. We're so used to writing being such a thing of isolation in a way that when we have to go out into the world, it feels like we've been thrown out into something, you know. But I enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing book tours. I enjoy getting to meet my readers, especially the young readers. Like today here at this event, all of these school kids came and they were amazing and incredible, and that was awesome. So, you know, but it's fun at times, but it can be exhausting. You know, I did 15 cities in North America before I came here. You know, from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast, and then Canada, from East Coast of Canada to the West Coast of Canada. So it was.
How much coffee have you had?
Oh, you know, not coffee, but Diet Coke. Like I've had enough Diet Coke. I should probably buy stock in Coke. But you know, it's been a lot. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed getting to talk to people and seeing different people from different walks of life and hearing how they took to my books. So that's been amazing.
Now, diversity is something which has kind of been a big talking point in various industries, including publishing. And, you know, for us here in the UK, we always see a lot of bursaries and a lot of, you know, organisations, you know, encouraging diversity. But do you feel that there's been a real impact from, you know, the launch of We Are Diverse Books, from, you know, The Hate You Give to now? Do you see that significant difference?
I do, and then in ways I don't. You know, I'm starting to see more diverse authors getting book deals. I'm starting to see more diverse books, but the numbers still show, you know, it's still small. You know, and the numbers even show, what's worse to me is that the numbers show that even though there's been an increase in diverse books, there has not been an increase in diverse authors. And it's important, not to say people can't write what they want to write, but it's important that we give these voices the microphones to be heard, because for so long our narratives have been controlled by others, and that's created stereotypes that's led to racial bias and all of these things. So it's important that we get to tell our own stories. But I am seeing some differences, but my fear is that, you know, I've always said my fear is that, you know, with the success of The Hate You Give, all of a sudden the expectation is for all Black authors to write stories like that, when it shouldn't be. You know, just because this was successful, it should not mean that you expect all Black authors to fit into that same kind of box. So we should be able to have rom-coms. We should be able to have stories of Black girls dating vampires. You know, we should be able to have our own dystopias. Even though we feel like we're living in dystopias now, we should be able to have our own, you know. So we should be able to tell as many types of stories as possible, and not just stories of social things or police brutality, blah, blah, blah. So I hope that The Hate You Give, the success of The Hate You Give, if more so shows publishing that Black people read, Black kids read, and other people will read about Black kids. So let's give them a wide variety of stories.
And lastly, what would you like readers to take away from reading On the Come Up?
I hope that readers read this book, and one, if they feel often that they're both too much and not enough, especially my Black girls, if they feel like they're too much and not enough, I hope that they feel seen, they feel heard in this book, but they also feel like they are enough in this book, that they can be as loud as they want, they can be angry at times if they want. There's nothing wrong with Black women being angry. That stereotype has made us feel as if we can't. There's nothing wrong with us having anger, because the thing is, that's not who we are completely. We can have anger, we can have joy, you know, and I hope that they walk away from this book feeling triumphant, but I also hope they walk away deciding to define themselves in a society that often tries to do it for them. I hope that all of my readers decide to do that. So, you know, with The Hate You Give, it was all about finding your voice. I hope that with this one, they decide to truly make some noise.